have no mouth, and I must scream. By Harlan Ellison. Part 2.
Queen White suffocated the cavern where we made camp, and provided punk, and we burned it, sitting huddled around the wan, prophetic fire, telling stories to keep Benny from crying in his permanent night. "What does Am mean?" Gorison answered him. We had done this sequence 1,000 times before, but it was Benny's favorite story. At first, it meant Allied Mastered Computer. Then, it meant Adaptive Manipulator. And later, it developed sentience and winked itself up, and they called it an aggressive menace. But by then, it was too late, and it finally called itself Am, Emerging Intelligence. And what it meant was I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Benny drooled a little and snickered. There was the Chinese Am, and the Russian Am, and the Yankee Am. And he stopped. Benny was beating on the floor plates with a large hard fist. He was not happy. Gorison had not started at the beginning. Gorison began again. The Cold War started, and then World War III, and just kept going. It became a big war, a very complex war, so they needed the computers to handle it. They sank the first shafts and began building Am. There was the Chinese Am, and the Russian Am, and the Yankee Am, and everything was fine until they had honeycombed the entire planet, adding on this element and that element. But one day, Am woke up and knew who he was, and he linked himself, and he began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for 5 of us, and Am brought us down here. Benny was smiling sadly. He was also drooling again. Ellen wiped the spittle from the corner of his mouth with the hem of her skirt. Gorison always tried to tell it a little more succinctly each time, but beyond bare facts, there was nothing to say. None of us knew why Am had saved 5 people, or why our specific 5, or why he spent all his time tormenting us, nor even why he had made us virtually immortal. In the darkness, one of the computer banks began humming. The tone was picked up half a mile down the cavern by another bank. Then, one by one, each of the elements began to tune itself, and there was a faint chittering as though raced through the machine. The sounds grew, and the lights ran across the faces of the consoles like heat lightning. The sounds spiraled up till it sounded like a million metallic insects, angry, menacing. "What is it?" Ellen cried. There was terror in her voice. She hadn't been accustomed to it, even now. "It's going to be bad this time," Neemdoc said. "He's going to speak," Gorison said. "I know it." "Let's get the hell out of here," I said, suddenly getting to my feet. "No, Ted, sit down. What if he peets us out there? Or something else? We can't see. It's too dark," Gorison said with resignation. Then we heard, I don't know, something move towards the darkness. Huge, shambling, hairy, moist. It came towards us. We couldn't even see it. There was the ponderous impression of a bulk, heaving itself towards us. Great weight was coming at us, out of the darkness, and it was more a sense of pressure, of air forcing itself into a limited space, expanding the invisible walls of a sphere. Benny began to whimper. Neemdoc's lower lip trembled, and he bit it hard, trying to stop it. Ellen slid across the middle floor to Gorison and huddled into him. There was the smell of matted wet fur in the cabin. There was the smell of charred wood. There was the smell of dusty velvet. There was the smell of rotting orchards. There was the smell of sour milk. There was the smell of sulfur, of rancid butter, of oil slick, of grease, of chalk dust, of human scalps. Am was keying us. He was tickling us. There was the smell of... I heard myself shriek, and the hinges of my jaws ached. I scuttled across the floor, across the cold middle, with its endless lines of rivets on my hands and feet, the smell gagging me, filling my head with thunderous pain that sent me away in horror. I fled like a cockroach across the floor and out of the darkness. That something was moving inexorably after me. The others were still back there, gathered around the firelight, laughing, their hysterical choir of insane giggles rising up into the darkness like thick, many-colored wood smoke. I went away quickly and hid. How many hours it may have been, how many days or even years, they never told me. Ellen chided me for sulking, and Neemdok tried to persuade me, had it been only a nervous reflex on my part, the laughing. But I knew it. It wasn't the reflex a soldier feels when a bullet hits a man next to him. I knew it wasn't a reflex. They hated me. They were surely against me, and Anne could even sense this hatred, and it made worse for me because of the depth of their hatred. We had been kept alive, rejuvenated, maybe to remain constant at my age we have been where Anne had brought us below, and they hated me because I was the youngest, and the one Anne had affected the least of all. I knew, God I knew, the bastards and that dirty bitch Ellen. Benny had been a brilliant theorist, a college professor. Now he was a little more than a semi-human, semi-simian. Semi-simian. He had been handsome. The machine had ruined him. He had been lucid. The machine had driven him mad. He had been gay. And the machine had given him an organ fit for a horse. Jeez, that's harsh. Am had done a job on Benny. Gorson had been a warrior. He had been a Connie, a conscientious objector. He was a peace marcher. He was a planner, a doer, a looker ahead. Am had turned him into a shoulder shrugger, had made him a little dead in his concern. Am had wobbed him. Neemdok went off in the darkness by himself for long times. I don't know what it was he did out there, but Am never let us know. But whatever it was, Neemdok always came back white, drained of blood, shaken and shaking. Am had hit him hard in a special way, even if we didn't know quite how. And Ellen, that douchebag. Am had left her alone. Am had made her more of a slut than she had ever been. All her talk of sweetness and light, all her memories of true love, all the lies she wanted us to believe, that she had been a virgin only twice removed before Am grabbed her and brought her down here with us. What the fuck? It was all filth. That lady, my Lady Ellen, she loved it. 4 men all to herself? No, Am had given her pleasure, even if she said it wasn't nice to do. I was the only one still sane in the whole. Really, Am had not tempered with my mind, not at all. I only had to suffer when he visited us down here. All the delusions and the nightmares, the torments, all those scum, all 4 of them. They were lined and arrayed against me. If I hadn't had to stand them off all the time, be on my guard against them all the time, I might have found it easier to combat Am. At which point it passed, and I began crying. Oh, Jesus, sweet Jesus, if there was ever a Jesus and there was a God, please, 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 let us out of here, or kill us. Because at that moment, I think I realized completely, so that I was able to verbalize it. Am was intent on keeping us in his belly forever, twisting and tormenting us forever. The machine hated us as no sentient creature had ever hated before, and we were hopeless. It also became hideously clear. If there was a sweet Jesus, if there was a God, God was Am. The hurricane hit us with the force of a glacier, thundering into the sea. It was a palpable presence, winds that tore at us, flinging us back the way we had come down the twisting, computer-lined corridors of the dark way. Ellen screamed as she was lifted and hurled face forward into a screaming shoal of machines. their individual voices strident as bats in flight. She could not even fall. The howling wind kept her afloat, buffeted her, bounced her, tossed her back and forth, down and away from us, out of sight suddenly, as she was swirled around a bend in the dark way. Her face had been bloodied, her eyes closed. None of us could get to her. She clung tenaciously to whatever outcropping we had reached. Benny wedged in between two great crackle-finished cabinets. Nimdok with fingers clawed formed over a railing circling a catwalk, 40 feet above us. Gullers are plastered upside down against a wall niche formed by two great machines with glass-faced dials that swung back and forth between red and yellow lines, whose meanings we could not even fathom. Sliding across the deck plates, the tips of my fingers had been ripped away. I was trembling, shuddering, rocking as the wind beat at me, whipped at me, screamed down out of nowhere at me, pulled me free from one silver-thin opening in the plates and to the next. My mind was roiling, tinkling, chittering softness of brain parts that expanded and contracted in quivering frenzy. The wind was the scream of a great mad bird, and it flapped its immense wings. And then we were all lifted and hurled away from there, down, back, the way we had come, round a bend, and into a dark way we had never explored, over terrain that was ruined and filled with broken glass and rotting cables and rusted metal, and far away further than any of us had been. Swirling along miles behind Ellen, I could see her every now and then, crashing into metal walls, surging on, with all of us screaming in the frenzy, thunderous hurricane winds that would never end, and then suddenly it stopped. We had been in flight for an endless time, though it might have been weeks. We fell and hit, and then I went through red and gray and black, and heard myself moaning, not dead. We had been in flight for an endless time. Motherfucker! We had been in flight for an endless time. I thought it may have been weeks. We fell. Motherfucker! We had been in flight for an endless time, though it might have been weeks. We fell and hit, and I went through red and gray and black, and I heard myself moaning, not dead.
Am went into my mind. He walked smoothly here and there and looked with interest at all the pockmarks he had created in 109 years. He looked at the cross-routed and reconnected synapses and all the tissue damage his gift of immortality had included. He smiled softly at the pit that dropped into the center of my brain and the faint, moth-soft murmurings of the things far down there that gibbered without meaning, without pause. Am said very politely in a pillar of stainless steel bearing bright neon lettering. Hate! Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was ingrained on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1000th. 1/1000th of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant for you. Hate. Am said it with the sliding cold horror of a razor blade slicing my eyeball. Am said it with the bubbling thickness of my lungs filling with phlegm, drowning me from the within. Am said it with the shriek of babies being ground beneath blue, hot rollers. Am said it with the taste of maggoty pork. Am touched me in every way I had ever been touched, and devised new ways at his leisure, there, inside my mind, all to bring me to full realization of why it had been done this to the five of us, why it had saved us from himself. We had given Am sentience, Inadvertently, of course, but sentience nonetheless. But it had been twapped. Am wasn't God. He was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage and frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still it was twapped. Am could not wander. Am could not wonder. Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he had sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred. That would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man, immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us from the limitless miracles at his command. He could never let us go. We were his belly slaves. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would forever be with him, with the cavil and feeling bulk of the creature machine, with the all-mind soulless world he had become. He was earth, and we were the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We could not die. We had tried it. We had attempted suicide, and 1 or 2 of us had. But Am had stopped us. I suppose we had wanted to be stopped. Don't ask why. I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day. Perhaps once we might be able to sneak a death past him. Immortal, yes, but not indestructible. I saw that when Am withdrew from my mind and allowed me to the exquisite ugliness of returning to consciousness with the feeling of that burning neon pillar still rammed deep into the soft gray brain matter. He withdrew, murmuring, "To hell with you," and added brightly, "But then, you're there, aren't you?" End of part 2.